In the ancient primordial land of Westeros, the Dawn Age unfolds as a time of mystical wonder and primordial beings. The first settlers of this age are the ancient children of the forest, small magical creatures who revere nature and wield powerful magic. They carve eerie, ghostly faces into the ancient weirwood trees, which are central to their spiritual practices. Their world is one of dense forests and primordial magic, where they live in harmony with the vast giants, towering beings who roam the land. Together, these races shape the early landscape of Westeros, setting the stage for the epic conflicts and dramatic changes that will flow throughout this continent's bloody timeline. The mist hung heavy over the Arm of Dawn, as the first men armed with bronze weapons made their fateful crossing from Essos into Westeros. Determined to claim the rich lands for themselves, they began carving out settlements, cutting down sacred weirwoods, and pushing deeper into the continent. Their arrival did not go unnoticed. The children of the forest, ancient and magical, watched in alarm as these invaders encroached on their territory. Tensions quickly escalated into violent confrontations, with the children unleashing the forces of nature against the first men, causing forests to come alive and the earth to swallow their foes. Yet despite the children's powerful magic, the first men continued to press forward, undeterred, setting the stage for a new era of conflict and change in Westeros. In a desperate bid to stem the tide of the first men's relentless invasion, the children of the forest called upon their ancient and mysterious magic to reshape the very face of Westeros. With a combination of powerful spells and the raw force of nature, they shattered the land between Dawn and Essos, creating the treacherous stepstones, a chain of jagged, storm-battered isles. These newly formed islands acted as both a physical barrier and a strategic advantage, slowing the advance of the first men and forcing them into treacherous waters fraught with peril. The creation of the stepstones not only altered the geography of Westeros forever, but also intensified the conflict, as the first men were now forced to navigate a fractured land, with every step fraught with danger from both the environment and the children's guerrilla tactics. As the Arm of Dawn lay shattered and submerged beneath the waves, the first men faced a daunting challenge, reinforcing their positions across the treacherous newly formed straits. Undeterred, they quickly adapted to the changing landscape, turning to the sea as their new battlefield. With swift ingenuity, they constructed a fleet of sturdy longships designed to navigate the churning waters and evade the lethal rocks that now dotted the coastline. Their naval strategies evolved, focusing on quick, agile maneuvers and hit-and-run tactics that allowed them to outmaneuver their enemies. By coordinating their forces through a series of well-planned amphibious assaults, the first men successfully reinforced their hold on key positions, turning the sea itself into a weapon against their foes. Garth Greenhand, also known as Garth the Green or Garth Greenhair, is a legendary figure among the first men, often revered as the mythical High King who led his people across the Arm of Dawn into Westeros. Tales depict him as a godlike being, with green hands and hair, who brought life and fertility wherever he walked. Known for his crown of vines and flowers, Garth is said to have taught the first men the secrets of agriculture, making the land bloom under his touch. His influence was so profound that even barren women were said to become fertile in his presence, and lords offered their daughters to him in hopes of bountiful harvests. Some stories suggest he existed before the first men, interacting with the children of the forest and giants, while others see him as a mere war chief or petty king who led the first migration. Regardless of the version, Garth's legacy is intertwined with the dawn of the first men in Westeros. The wood dancers, ethereal warriors of the children of the forest, moved through the ancient woods of Westeros with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly. With bark-colored skin, luminous eyes reflecting the hues of the forest, and garments woven from leaves and vine, they blended seamlessly into their surroundings. As elite protectors, they defended the sacred groves and weirwoods of the children, using their unmatched skill in guerrilla warfare to strike at the invading First Men. From treetops and shadows they launched silent, lethal ambushes, their dragon-glass blades and bows turning the forest itself into a deadly weapon. Against these elusive warriors, the heavily armored First Men found themselves outmatched, falling to the wood dancers who vanished as swiftly as they struck. The Green Seers, revered by the children of the forest, were mythical figures draped in the mystique of their ancient magic. Often depicted as gaunt and ageless, their eyes were pools of shifting green light, reflecting the deep wisdom and profound connection they held with nature. Cloaked in robes woven from the very essence of the forest, they moved with an eerie grace, as if the trees themselves guided their steps. Their primary power was green sight, an ability to perceive the world through the eyes of trees and animals, allowing them to see beyond the present into the past and future. This gift, coupled with their unique skill in warging, merging their consciousness with the minds of beasts, made them formidable in warfare. They summoned great waves of thorny vines that ensnared and immobilized the First Men, and they transformed trees into monstrous warriors that hurled themselves into battle. The Green Seers also commanded flocks of ravens and packs of wolves, making them crucial in the battles ahead. In the brutal dawn of the First Border Wars, the First Men launched a fierce invasion of the Ashlands, their sights set on driving the children of the forest from their ancient homeland. The clash was a tempest of steel and magic, as the First Men deployed relentless strategies, carving through the dense, enchanted woods with unyielding force. Key battles erupted with savage intensity. Warriors clashed with towering giants who roared defiance, while packs of direwolves, fierce and swift, were summoned by the children to defend their sacred grounds. The First Men, undeterred by the formidable beasts and the mystical defenses, pressed on with brutal efficiency. As blood stained the land and the skies darkened with the smoke of conflict, the First Men's relentless assault eventually overwhelmed the children, pushing them northward and securing their dominance over the Ashlands. In their relentless bid to reclaim the Ashlands, the children of the forest launched a series of desperate battles against the First Men. At sundown, the air would hum with the eerie chants of Green Seers, calling forth shadow cats that stalked the darkness. Overhead, ravens circled, their black wings blending with the night, watching the movements of the First Men and relaying them to the advancing forces. Bloodthirsty bears ambushed the First Men from the trees, their fury tearing through ranks. Though many fell to the beasts, the sheer numbers of the First Men began to push back the children's relentless attacks. Despite the carnage wrought by the creatures, the tide of the First Men pressed forward, their warriors determined and unyielding. As the battle raged on, the land itself seemed to suffer as the roots of the Ashlands quivered, stirred by this never-ending war between the First Men and the children of the forest. As the First Border Wars raged to their breaking point, the children of the forest, driven to desperation, unleashed their most perilous and forbidden magic upon the Ashlands. In a final attempt to halt the advancing armies of the Southern Men, they poisoned the very air, transforming the once fertile plains into a toxic wasteland. The sky turned ashen gray, and the ground writhed with instability as the atmosphere itself became a lethal weapon. Soldiers from both sides choked on the acrid fumes, their skin blistering under the poisonous mists, while the once solid ground cracked open into deadly fissures. Amid the chaos, the children of the forest began their retreat to the safety of the north, leaving behind a devastated battlefield, forever scarred by their magic. The war had come to an agonizing halt, and the land itself would never recover from the horrors unleashed that day. In desperation, the children of the forest retreated to the neck as they faced extinction at the hands of the First Men. Leaf, a leader among them, devised a desperate plan to save her people from defeat. The children were losing their sacred lands, their numbers dwindling as the First Men cut down their trees and slaughtered their kin. In a last effort, a small group of Green Seers captured a mortal man, one of their enemies, and bound him to a heart tree deep within the forest. Leif, with grim determination, pressed a cursed dragonglass dagger into his chest, transforming him into the first of his kind. His eyes turned icy blue as the magic twisted him into something neither dead nor alive, a creature of ice and darkness. The children made him a commander, believing he would be the weapon to turn the tide of war. But after his creation, the land grew colder, and a new terror was born. In the dead of night, the northernmost settlements of the first men, particularly near the Neck, were ravaged by an unseen enemy, as mysterious and deadly attacks decimated entire settlements. The White Walkers, newly conjured by the children of the forest, striked from the shadows with an eerie silence, leaving behind only frost and destruction. The first men, desperate to uncover the source of these brutal assaults, sent scouts who mysteriously vanished into the darkness. In response, a larger force was mobilized, but they were met with an overwhelming cold and arcane power that proved devastatingly effective against them. As the survivors stumbled back in fear and confusion, a resolute chieftain rose amidst the panic, vowing to avenge his fallen warriors and strike back against this new and terrifying threat. The chieftain staggered into camp, his face pale and clothes bloody. Quickly he sent a raven to King Brandon Greenhand, who was deep in the Reach, battling the last of the giants there. His message was dire. The children of the forest had unleashed the White Walkers, beings of ice and death. Brandon, though far away, granted more warriors and sent out the call. Soon a vast host marched north, determined to crush the forest spirits. In the frozen, mist-shrouded land of the Neck, the children struck first with their magic, but the real terror came when the White Walkers appeared, their frozen weapons slicing through shield and bone. The first men fought bravely, but their blades shattered against the ice demons, leaving them helpless. The survivors retreated south, however. The first sought to give chase, but was commanded by Leif to fall back. After a brutal defeat, the first men fleeing discovered shards of an unknown material embedded in some of the bodies of their fallen. King Brandon Greenhand, victorious in driving the giants from the Reach, was consumed with vengeance after hearing of his forces' massacre at the Neck. Though he hadn't been present, the loss weighed heavily on him. Determined to strike back, he turned his wrath toward one of the last strongholds of the children at Blue Lake. Leading his forces through the dense and eerie woods, he began slaughtering the remaining children, the blood so thick it changed the water to red. He also ordered the forests to be set ablaze. It was a brutal, calculated retaliation meant to cripple the ancient race and exact retribution for the brutal attacks caused by their icy abominations. Following the devastation at Red Lake, Brandon, now known as Brandon the Bloody Blade, led the first men into the cold, treacherous forest of the Neck for a decisive battle. The forest erupted into chaos as the first men clashed with the White Walkers and their desperate allies, the children of the forest. Fire crackled through the air as beasts savagely tore through ranks. Amidst this carnage, the children chanted ancient spells, desperately trying to control the chaos. As the battle raged, Brandon faced the first, their weapons clashing with explosive force, but his obsidian blade remained unbroken. The first faltered and vanished before he could land a fatal blow, leaving the king swamped. As their magic began to falter, the first attempted to annihilate the Green Seers, but the Wood Dancers held him back. With their combined magic, Leif began chanting one final incantation. Leif stood at the edge of the sacred grove, hands raised to the storm-dark sky as the first edged closer. The old god surged through her, and with a voice trembling from desperation, she called upon the Hammer of the Waters, a final fateful attempt to stop their doom. The earth groaned beneath her, but this war had drained the children's magic, and the spell spun wildly out of control. The land cracked apart, unleashing a devastating flood that tore through the icy forests, transforming them into a churning swamp. As the floodwaters raged, Brandon fought his way through the undead, reaching Leif just as the night's cold grasp loomed over her. Seizing her in his arms, he leapt from the collapsing grove, as the ground split into a jagged scar across the continent. Together, they were thrown into the rising flood, clinging to each other as the waters swallowed the world around them. In the aftermath of the Hammer of the Waters and the retreat of the White Walkers up north, the children of the forest and the first men stood on the brink of extinction. Brandon, still shaken by the flood and the old god's power, knelt before the green seers within these newly formed marshlands, his people following suit, their belief in the children's magic solidified. Knowing that war would lead to mutual destruction, both sides journeyed to the Isle of Faces, where the weirwoods stood as witnesses to their fate. There, the chiefs of the First Men and the Green Seers forged the pact. The First Men vowed never to harm the sacred forests, while the children allowed them to settle the open lands. Faces were carved into the weirwoods, marking the end of the Dawn Age and the beginning of the Age of Heroes. After the signing of the pact between the First Men and the children of the forest, the Green Men became guardians of the Isle of Faces, deep within the God's Eye. Legends say these figures, with their green skin and horned heads, protect the sacred weirwoods carved to witness the ancient treaty. Their magic is said to be so strong that anyone who tries to approach the island is driven away by fierce winds. Though the Andals sought to conquer all, they were unable to breach the isle. It's whispered that Daemon Targaryen once glimpsed one near the weirwood tree in Harrenhal's Godswood, and that Howland Reed spent a winter on the isle before attending the great tourney at Harrenhal. To this day, many believe the Green Men still protect the weirwoods, and perhaps even the last of the children of the forest. The old gods are ancient, nameless deities, worshipped by the First Men and the children of the forest in Westeros. Rooted in nature, they are believed to reside in the trees, stones and streams, with weirwood trees acting as sacred vessels for their presence. Worshippers, especially in the north, gather in Godswoods to pray in silence before heart trees, which bear faces carved by the children. Marriage ceremonies are performed in front of heart trees, with the couple joining hands and kneeling in silent prayer. Funeral customs, while not fully known, often involved burying the deceased in crypts. There are no priests or texts in this ancient faith, as the old gods are said to watch through the eyes of the weirwoods, judging those who stand before them. Offenses such as kinslaying, slavery and incest are considered deep transgressions, and it is also believed that no one can lie before a heart tree, as the old gods will know it. In the aftermath of the Dawn Age Pact, the First Men spread across Westeros, shaping new settlements and ways of life. In the north, many held to the old gods, their connection with the children of the forest still strong. Among them was Brandon the Bloody Blade, who alongside Leaf of the Children ventured far north in pursuit of the first, though the trail was soon lost. While Leaf stayed in the far northern wilds, Brandon established small villages, unknowingly preparing the way for something greater in the years to come. Yet, as time passed, Brandon grew restless. Leaving his northern settlements behind, he wandered across the now peaceful Westeros, visiting lands and taking women as he went. It was said that his journey was not only one of adventure, but that his presence in distant regions left a lasting mark, one that would be felt across the realms for generations. When the children of the forest turned the neck into a vast expanse of bogs and marshes, some First Men settled there, becoming a reclusive people. They built their homes on floating crannogs, woven from thatch and reeds, drifting silently atop the waters. Small and elusive, they carried nets, bronze knives and three-pronged frog spears, weapons perfectly suited for their guerrilla warfare. Hidden in the bogs, they struck with poisoned arrows from unseen places, leaving their enemies to fall in agony. They breathed the swamp, moving with the land itself, ever watchful. Some said their size came from a union with the children of the forest, while others claimed the hardship of the mire shaped them so. Long did they resist invaders, and though they once served their marsh kings, legend told of the day they swore fealty to House Reed of Greywater Watch, their home as secret as the Crannogmen themselves. After the pact ended the Dawn Age and marked peace between the first men and the children of the forest, some of the first men ventured to the Iron Islands, where they began to settle and forge a distinct culture. Harsh and isolated, the Iron Islands shaped these settlers into a seafaring people with a fierce and warlike nature. They turned away from the old gods and embraced their new drowned god, a deity who symbolized the brutal, unforgiving nature of the sea. The drowned god demanded strength and sacrifice, with drowning rituals marking the faith of his followers. Iron-born culture glorified raiding, pillaging, and living by the iron price, rejecting wealth obtained through peaceful means. The harsh seas and their worship of this deity fostered a people who thrived on conquest, believing that what was taken by strength was rightfully theirs. The three sisters, Sweet Sister, Long Sister, and Little Sister, are home to the Sister Men, descendants of the first men who migrated to the islands after the pact. Unlike their mainland kin who worshipped the old gods, they revered the Lady of the Waves and the Lord of the Skies, deities believed to create storms when they mated. The Sister Men once offered sacrifices, including casting dwarfs into the sea. But with the arrival of the Andals and the faith of the Seven, the worship of these gods faded. Despite this, remnants of the old ways persist, as the Sister Men remain fiercely independent, known for piracy, smuggling, and mistrust of outsiders. Even now, under the loose control of House Arryn, their allegiance is fickle, shaped by conflict and distrust of both Northmen and mainlanders. As the Dawn Age ended, Westeros was forever changed by the First Men's arrival and their brutal conflict with the Children of the Forest. The First Men crossed the Arm of Dawn, armed with bronze weapons, clashing with the Children who wielded powerful magic and dragonglass. The land bore the scars of their war, from the shattering of the arm to the burning of the weirwoods and ashlands. Despite the Children's desperate attempts, like the flooding of the Neck, both sides were nearly destroyed. Finally, a fragile peace was forged with the pact on the Isle of Faces, ending the Dawn Age. The First Men claimed the open lands, while the Children withdrew to their forests. But this was just the beginning, as the Age of Heroes loomed with legends yet to rise.